Hey everybody. As I'm looking through your practice paragraphs with the pie, I'm noticing some places that I think you could really use some help. And I think a big way to help you with this is to let you watch me write a sample paragraph. So if you're at home in quarantine, this is for you. If you are struggling, this is for you. If you're not getting the grades you want to get, this is for you. Okay, so I'm going to, in real time, write a paragraph that answers this prompt. So you're going to see it in the raw. You're going to see me make mistakes and fix them. And you're going to see kind of what I'm expecting from you as you're continuing to do literary analysis. So you see on my screen here, I have the prompt. And I have my text over here. You need your text up with you when you're doing an analysis because you're going to be pulling things from that. And then I have down here, I have a box that says do's and don'ts. So as I'm doing this, I'm going to be listing some things I want you to do in a literary analysis and some things I don't want you to do. And a lot of these are things that I'm seeing as I'm looking at your paragraphs, okay? So first thing I need to do is find out what my prompt wants from me. So I'm going to read it and I'm going to look for background, advice, and task. And there's always going to be a task or two or three. And there may not be background or advice. So I'm going to look at each sentence, take it in bite by bite, carefully read Soto's short piece, The Pie. Well, there's no task there. It just wants me to carefully read. I don't have to do anything other than read it. In a well-organized paragraph, okay, so I'm writing a paragraph, and this is a task word to analyze right here. So this tells me that I have a task. Analyze the speaker's complex relationship with guilt, and so that's the end of this one. So this is my first task here, right here. And how this leads to the meaning of the work as a whole. Here is my second task, okay? This is my second task. So I'm looking at two things: the speaker's complex relationship with guilt and how this leads to the meaning of the work as a whole. If you need to, list them out. I've done this before with prompts that were really heavy, so I need to tell in my assertion what is the speaker's complex relationship with guilt, and then how does this lead to the meaning of the work as a whole, or MOAU, you've probably heard me say. I'm in a hurry here. Okay, and this, we talked about this in class. This is just what? It's just what? It's theme. That's it. It's just theme. It's just asking what is the deeper meaning, the message of the text, okay? And then this is advice here. You may wish to consider imagery, selection, detail, and tone. So one thing I don't want you to do, I have my first don't, okay? And I didn't see this very much, and it's okay if this was you, okay? I'm not picking on you, but I want you to be aware of this. Do not, especially in just a paragraph, try to tackle all three of these. Just don't, okay? That's why it's a don't. So your first don't, when the prompt suggests certain devices, pick one or two. And the reason for that is because you don't want to bite off more than you can chew. And for me to analyze all three of these in depth the way I need to, imagery, selection of detail, and tone, I would end up just writing a full essay if I were to truly analyze them with fidelity. So I would pick one or two. There's plenty of imagery that you can tie back to a theme. He is very intentional with his selection of detail, okay? And you can certainly write a full paragraph on tone, but you don't need to do all three. That's why it says you may wish to consider. Some of you may have written about illusion, or you may have written about personification or diction, and that's fine too. That's why it says you may wish to. It's not a requirement, it's just advice, okay? So I'm probably going to do, I'm probably going to do illusion because there's a lot of biblical illusion in this text. And I'm going to stick with that. Now, I may talk briefly about imagery, but illusion is going to be what I am mainly focused on. But that's not really, the prompt asked me for these two things. So these are the two things I definitely need to prove. Okay, so I have my first do for you as we get started here. The first thing you need to do after you decide what the prompt is asking you for, well, that is your first do. The next thing that I would do is draft my assertion, okay, so that it answers those tasks. It provides an answer. You don't have to build up to your answer. You want to give it in the first sentence in that assertion, and then prove it in your response. So here we go, okay. So I may make a mistake or two here. I'm just going to fix it and just be really real and raw in this writing process, just like I want you to be. So here it says, what is the speaker's complex relationship with guilt? So in the text, The Pie by Gary Soto, the speakers, and I'm using the same language as the prompt, the speaker's inability to handle his guilt, and this is his relationship with it. He is unable to handle it. So I've answered it. I've done number one. His inability to handle his guilt leads to the deeper understanding that, let me think, what's a good theme? Deeper understanding that guilt can often consume. I don't love that. So we'll leave it there and then I'll fix it. And I also need to incorporate some biblical illusion talk in that, since I'm going to be discussing biblical illusions in my response. So I could say here in the text, The Pie by Gary Soto, the author's use of biblical illusions. I didn't just say illusions. I'm going to be talking specifically about the biblical ones, so I need to put that in my assertion. Biblical illusions highlights the speaker's inability to handle his guilt and leads to the deeper understanding that guilt can become all-consuming. So yeah, I've accomplished every task now in one sentence. It doesn't have to be one sentence. I've seen some really great assertions that are 2 or 3 sentences. But you need to make sure that you're addressing this whole part. And I know, down the road, you can't score very high on the AP exam unless you completely answer the prompt in your assertion. So I'm trying to prepare you for that. The author's use of biblical illusions highlights the speaker's inability to handle his guilt and leads to the deeper understanding that guilt can become all-consuming. Okay, so this is what I have to prove. Everything points back to this. Everything I type from here on out needs to support this sentence right here. Okay, this is what, if you want to relate this to something, this is me in a court and I'm the lawyer and I am proving that because he uses biblical illusions, we're able to see the speaker's inability to handle his guilt, and it also leads us to this deeper understanding that guilt can be all-consuming, okay, if we don't handle it. So I have my assertion. Now I need to give some evidence, and I like to weave my evidence into my commentary. It's less choppy. It reads better. So that's what I'm going to model for you because I want you to get there. Okay, so if you write your own sentence for your evidence, that's fine. But it helps you with analysis if you can figure out how to weave it. So here's how I would do that. So I need to find an example. Okay, I need to find an example of a biblical illusion. Remember, everything's about that assertion that shows that the speaker cannot handle his guilt and supports this theme. Okay, so I have to support what I'm saying here. So we have several here. Okay, he says, I knew enough about hell to stop me from stealing. I was holy in almost every bone. Okay, this has a lot of guilt overtones to it right here. Some days I recognize the shadows of angels flopping on the backyard grass. And other days I heard faraway messages in the plumbing that howled underneath the house when I crawled there looking for something to do. So this narrator is very biblically, religiously minded. So we know that something is probably going to happen that's going to, we know he's going to steal, that's going to make him feel guilty. So let's see. Ooh, the juice of guilt wetting my underarms. That's disgusting. But that right there, the fact that he's sweating and that Soto worded it this way. Why would he word it that way? That's something I can pull. Okay. I don't really know that it's a biblical allusion, actually. So let's see. I'm looking for a biblical allusion. Here we go. Here's a good one. Yes, this one has so much. Now, what I'm seeing a lot of people do is they'll take this whole quote and they'll copy it and they'll throw the whole thing right there. Like that. That you may even lead into it. You may say, Soto says, now I have this big quote that's stuck in there, and then I'm going to, and I've seen this a lot too, where you'll give me one little line of commentary. So you'll say, this shows the speaker feels bad. And then you'll give me another quote, and then you'll give me a little sentence about it. Okay, so that here's a don't. Do not drop huge quotes in your response without fully analyzing every piece again. Okay, every word, every phrase. You need to use every bit of your evidence. It needs to be intentional. So what I'm going to do, I knew that this sentence contained a biblical allusion. That's what I was looking for. And I specifically need one that shows that he's unable to handle his guilt and that the guilt has become all-consuming, because that's my theme. So I'm going to pick things out from this quote. Let me delete my rinky-dink sentence there. I'm going to pick aspects of this quote out that I need, and I'm going to talk about them and point them back to my assertion. Okay? So I'm just going to leave it down there. I'm not going to put the whole thing in my response. Okay, just know that. Don't do that. So here we have where I'm going to weave my evidence into my commentary. Okay, the speaker alludes. You see how I use that word? Because I'm talking about allusions. Alludes to Eve's mishap in the garden. And she ended up, and I'm probably going to fix some of this because it's a little too wordy. I'm such a wordy writer. When she ended up in deep trouble with snakes. And I don't need all of this in the middle right here. I don't need this about Sister Mary. So I'm going to put an ellipses here. An ellipsis is 3 dots that just cuts out unnecessary text. And that's what I'm trying to get you to do, is cut it out. If it doesn't give you purpose, if it doesn't support your assertion, you don't need it, okay? Got in deep trouble with snakes. No, I need this part about an apple. So let me go back. When she... Okay, I'm going to completely scrap this. See, I told you this was going to be messy. Writing is so messy, and it's also can be very therapeutic, but that's a side note. Okay, the speaker's guilt is obvious. So I'm giving an opinion. I'm giving a comment here. When he indicates that an apple got Eve in deep trouble. Semicolon. I'll put one there. showcasing his own showcasing how he equates him stealing the pie to Eve being thrown from the garden. Eve, her apple. I'm going to put the word apple here because it's important. How he equates him stealing the apple pie to Eve being the intentional, because it is the intentional use of the apple for Soto's selected fruit pie. Speaker's deep guilt that he has stolen something that did not belong to him. And I don't like the word something, so I'm going to fix it. I'm just trying to get my thoughts on paper. The intentional use of an apple for Soto's selected fruit pie highlights the speaker's deep guilt. Yeah, I can just cut that. He is consumed, and I'm using this word on purpose because in my theme I say that guilt can become all-consuming. He is consumed with the idea that he is being cast into the desert. Metaphorically, just as Adam and Eve were after they committed sin against God. Adding in some clarity words here. It's so important to reread. It is so important to reread. I can tell when a student hasn't reread something they've written. That an apple got you in deep trouble. I don't really love this semicolon here, so I'm just going to create two sentences. Delete this part, it's wordy. He equates himself stealing the apple pie to Eve being thrown from the garden for eating her own stolen apple. He's not really equating himself to stealing the pie to Eve being thrown from the garden. Yeah, so I need to change this. He equates himself stealing the apple pie to Eve committing the great sin. See, I need to pull some things around here. Sin when she eats her own stolen apple. Intentional use of an apple for Soto's fruit pie highlights the speaker's deep guilt. He's consumed with the idea that he's being cast in the desert, metaphorically, just as Adam and Eve were after they committed. They were caught by God. It's forbidden. And I'm repeating that it's stolen because that's where his guilt comes from, is that he stole this pie. Okay, it's not because he's going to gain weight from all the carbs. It's that he stole it. That's the point of his guilt. So that's why I'm including that in there. Okay, I'm going to reread now. I have my first piece of evidence and a little bit of commentary. I'm going to make sure it's good before I keep going and I keep biting off more for this. So in the text, The Pie by Gary Soto, the author's use of biblical allusions. Did I use a biblical allusion? Yes. Highlights the speaker's inability to handle his guilt. Did I talk about his inability to handle his guilt? Yes, I talked about how he was consumed with this. He cannot get past it. And did I discuss how it leads to a deeper understanding that guilt can become all-consuming? That is reflected in my response. I'm probably about to add a little bit more about that just to punch that a little further. So here we go. Evidence. The speaker's guilt is obvious when he indicates that an apple got Eve in deep trouble. I don't like the word obvious. Becomes the speaker. I don't like the wording of this. The speaker begins to dwell deeply on his own guilt. And he remembers. There we go. That's better. And this word dwell here further supports that he's becoming consumed with it. So it's all about proving this assertion right here. And I'm going to highlight that assertion just so we remember that's what we're referring to. Okay. This is what everything comes back to. Okay. That's a do. Right. Every single sentence to support the assertion. Nothing should be irrelevant. Something I want you to notice that I haven't done, that I saw a little bit of as I was reading through some of these, is that I never refer to you. Let me wrap this up. I never refer to you or me or I or we or us. You need to stay away from first and second person in analytical writing. Okay, you want to apply it to the world and humanity in general, not somebody specific. Something else that you haven't seen me do, and I'm seeing a lot of this, which this is normal for like beginning writers, but you're in pre-AP, so I want you to get away from this. So we never refer to the reader. Ever. We don't ever assume what the reader thinks, the reader's interpretation. I know you're just trying to avoid using I or you when you do that, so I guess that's a step up. But AP readers don't like this. The people who score the AP exams, this is a good way to not get the sophistication point. Okay, so never refer to the reader. Okay, back to this. Speaker begins to dwell deeply on his own guilt when he remembers that an apple got Eve in trouble. He equates himself stealing the apple pie to Eve committing the great sin when she eats her own stolen apple. You know what? And I could even combine these, because I'm saying the same thing right here. When I say he equates himself stealing the apple pie to he begins to dwell deeply on his own guilt. I would even say stealing the apple pie when he remembers that. That reads better. The speaker begins to dwell deeply on his own guilt of stealing the apple pie when he remembers that an apple got Eve in trouble, deep trouble, committing a great sin. See, but then that's redundant, so I'm going to go back. Yeah, this is better than, I don't know that I still love this, but it's better than what I just tried to do. Begins to dwell deeply on his own guilt, and he remembers that an apple got Eve in deep trouble. He equates himself stealing the apple pie to Eve committing the great sin when she eats her own stolen apple. I think this is what's awkward right here. Stealing the apple pie to Eve, eating her own stolen apple, and committing the great sin that punished mankind. Intentional use. The act of eating the apple in the Bible is what plummets humans out of God's favor by comparing his own sin to Eve's he is becoming, I'm tying it back to my assertion, consumed with feeling out of God's favor. Activating the pie in the Bible so it plummets humans out of God's favor. By comparing his own sin to Eve's, he is becoming consumed. I need to say the narrator because I'm saying he way too much. The speaker is becoming consumed with feeling out of God's favor. His guilt builds. Is more evident. Sorry. Okay. Anyway, his guilt is. I forgot what I was doing, so let me back this up a little bit. Start to make a different point here. I need a transition word. Further, the intentional use of an apple or social piles the speaker's deep guilt. Continues to highlight. Oops. Get this back. The speaker begins to dwell deeply on his own guilt, and he remembers that an apple got Eve in deep trouble. He equates himself stealing an apple pie to Eve, eating her own stolen apple, and committing the great sin that punished mankind. The act of eating the apple in the Bible is what plummets it out of God's favor. By comparing his own sin to Eve's, the speaker is becoming consumed with feeling out of God's favor. And I think I need a synonym for favor here because I'm using it a lot. Out of God's goodwill. That's a good one. Further, the intentional use. Yes, I needed a transition word here because I start to make a different point about the same piece of evidence. So I needed a transition word there. Now, I want you to notice something, and I'm not saying this is perfect, but all of this right here, all of this, look at that commentary, all of that came from here. Came from this little quote right here. I talk about the significance of apple. He's referencing Eve in the Bible and how she got in deep trouble. I have this phrase that is intentional. Okay, my evidence is intentional. I'm using every bit of it in my commentary as I discuss the deeper meaning. Okay, so I didn't just drop the full quote because I didn't need it. I was able to milk so much out of that little piece of evidence. So this is my commentary that supports that. Now I move with some different evidence here. Okay, so I embed some more evidence here. I'll say I need to tie it back to my theme. Oh, I did. He's consumed. He is deep guilt. The intentional use of an apple highlights the speaker's deep guilt. I feel like I already made this point up here when I said Eve was eating her own stolen apple. Yeah. Oops. Eating the apple by comparing his own sin of stealing apple pie to Eve's. No, I don't like that. Apple in the Bible is what plummets humans out of God's favor through God's will. Soto intentionally makes the fruit pie apple to emphasize this comparison of the speaker to Eve. speaker's actions to Eve's in the Bible, because it's a biblical allusion, and I'm trying to remind my reader that that's what I'm trying to do, use of biblical allusions. Okay, let me read this. The act of eating the apple in the Bible is what plummets humans out of God's favor. By comparing his own sin to Eve's, the speaker is becoming consumed with feeling out of God's goodwill. I used a semicolon here because this sentence, I could make it its own sentence, but this is emphasizing what I said here. It's like explaining it, and it's less blocky and less choppy if I use a semicolon there. Soto intentionally makes the fruit pie apple to emphasize the comparison of the speaker's actions to Eve in the Bible. So all of this comes from this little quote right here. You can do that. You just have to find something, and I found it in 2 seconds. I mean, I'm the teacher, so I've done this, but you just have to find something that has a lot of depth in it and can prove your point. Okay, so for my second piece, in the same thought, I'm just going to add this onto the end here. The speaker is consumed. And it's in the same sentence, which is why I said the same thought, because he's having the same thought right here. It's just one sentence. In the same thought, the speaker is consumed with the idea that he's being cast in the desert metaphorically, just as Adam and Eve were after they were caught by God eating a stolen, forbidden apple. Okay, all of this from that one quote. So here's my evidence. I'm just going to highlight it in green, just because that's what I've been doing. So now I've done my first piece of evidence and commentary. I need to do my second. Okay, so I need a second biblical allusion that highlights the speaker's inability to handle his guilt and leads to this deeper meaning that guilt can be all-consuming for us human beings. So I'm going to go back to my text. We talked about this. Let's see. Lay more pieces. I realized in my tiny bunny, 3 or 4 sins, the best thing in life came stolen. Cross-eyed Johnny. Okay, get away. I'd answer cross-eyed Johnny. Howling sound of plumbing. Was it God? Was it Father speaking from death? Or uncle with his last shining dune? How like the sea. Didn't get back. So what I'm noticing here is he's talking a lot about water. He returned home to drink water. It filled him up more than the pie. Now, the pie represents his sin and his temptation. So if that represents his temptation, the water must represent purifying him and the goodness, and it filled him up more so. And he's acknowledging that goodness, aka the water, is more satisfying to him in truth than the pie. Because he doesn't feel the guilt from the water. It belongs to him. I don't know. I'm trying to make a connection here. And then he goes to the source of the water, which would be the plumbing. And he's looking for redemption, looking for God. Okay, let me see if I can make this work. I'm going to move this over so I can see it. Okay, so we're talking about his inability to handle his guilt. Toward the end of the story, the narrator is so consumed by guilt that he retreats beneath the house. Now, it sounds like I'm summarizing, so I need to make sure that I fix this, okay? That he retreats beneath the house where the pipes lay. This indicates his need to be near the source of the water. I need to talk about what this means. Towards the end of the story, the narrator is consumed by guilt. Where the pipes lay. Oh, because it's just summarizing. So towards the end of the story, the narrator drinks water, potentially symbolic of purifying himself of his guilt, sin. So notice that I put my interpretation right there. Okay. I don't want it to sound like I'm summarizing. Towards the end of the story, the narrator drinks water, potentially symbolic of purifying himself of his guilt or sin. And I don't have to say in the Bible, water represents this, or when we get baptized, this. Okay. This is a given. As water is representative of washing away sins. Biblically represented washing away sins. Towards the end of the story, the narrator drinks water, potentially symbolic of purifying himself of his guilt. Sin as water is failure. Yeah, that's way too wordy. Towards the end of the story, water is alluded. It's not a biblical allusion. See, I don't think I can write about water. I think water is a symbol, but I don't know that it's a biblical allusion. So let me look for something else, because I don't think that's going to work. It's something I noticed, but it doesn't prove my assertion. So I need to find something else. Okay. So take that as a lesson for yourself, that even if it's something you notice, you either need to change your assertion, and I worked too hard on this, so I'm not changing my assertion, or you need to find something that fits. Okay. So I need to find something that fits if I can get my screen to work. So I need to find another biblical allusion. So let's see. He talks about I nearly wept trying to decide which to steal. I'm forgetting the flowery dust priests give off, the shadow of angels, and the proximity of God. How did it? Okay, so he thinks that God is in his pipes in the bottom of the house. Ooh, I forgot about this one. Let's do this one. Where it forged into two large bark scabbed limbs. Here we go. An allusion. Okay. The second biblical allusion is present as the squirrel nailed itself high on the trunk, and I'm going to need every bit of this, where it forked into two large bark scabbed limbs. And observes the speaker devour his sinful. The illusion present here is a reminder of Jesus Christ's death on his own trunk cross. And the idea that he is watching with potential, is watching like intently, because the squirrel nailed himself there. And also the use of the word nail when you talk about that. The illusion present here is a reminder of Jesus Christ's death on his own. It's not a reminder, it's a hint to Jesus Christ's death. I'm going to cut this. Jesus Christ's death, that he is watching intently. No, I need to change this. Watching the squirrel. The squirrel's nailing himself to the trunk alludes to Jesus Christ nailing on the cross and indicates that, I got to tie it back to my assertion, indicates that he, Jesus, is observing this sinful act. We have here. Okay. A second biblical allusion is present as the squirrel nailed itself high in the trunk where it walked to land. I need to change the tense on this. And observes the speaker devour his sinful apple pie. Squirrel's nailing himself to the trunk alludes to Jesus Christ nailing on the cross. Self to the, it's a T shape. The trunk alludes to Jesus Christ nailing on the cross and indicates that he, Jesus, is observing a sinful act. Okay, so the speaker sees what would normally be a common occurrence, a squirrel watching from a tree, as a warning. Warning's too harsh. It's a sign that he is betraying the God he loves. God he is sinning against. The signs all around him point to his impending guilt for his actions. Consume, there's that word again, consume his thoughts. Okay. Let's see what it looks like. It's probably not great, but maybe good enough. A second biblical allusion is present as the squirrel nails itself high on the trunk where it forks into two large bark scab limbs and observes the speaker devour his sinful apple pie. The squirrel's nailing himself. I need to say the animal because here it changes what the subject of the sentence is. Here it's talking about the tree. The tree doesn't observe the speaker. The animal does. And the animal observes the speaker devour his sinful apple pie. The squirrel's nailing himself to the T-shaped trunk alludes to Jesus Christ nailing on the cross. It indicates that he, Jesus, is observing the simple act of the speaker. The speaker sees what would normally be a common occurrence. A squirrel watching from a tree is a sign that he is betraying the God he is sinning against. That he is sinning against his God. Signs all around him point to his impending guilt for his actions that consume his thoughts. This right here is what ties it back and saves me. It ties it back to this theme, his inability to handle the guilt. Okay, toward the end of the story, the narrator, I've been saying speaker, the speaker's desire for relief from his all-consuming guilt is evident when he clings to a pipe that is howling. And further highlights, I like that word apparently, that guilt can become, trying to wrap it up here, tie it back to my theme. The speaker's desire for spiritual relief is evident when he clings to a pipe that is howling. To a pipe when he retreats beneath his house and clings to a howling pipe. This desperate act highlights that guilt can become all-consuming. It's not perfect, but it fits the mold. And I think it's valuable for you to see me struggle through this process, and to see me delete and add and rethink things, because that's what you need to do. You can't rush this. If you want an A on these things, you can't rush this. And if you're wondering what I would score this, right now I'd probably score it maybe a 5. I don't know that it's a full-blown 6. I'm not happy with this last sentence, and I think it could use a little bit more sophistication. But it's at least an A, I think. I mean, we're often harder on ourselves, so I don't know. But if this in any way is better than what you're doing, you need to take notice and make some changes. Okay, I hope that you learned something from this. And as always, I'm here to help you. So if you're intimidated by this, don't worry. I will keep doing whatever it takes to help you get there. Just take a deep breath and realize that writing is such a learning process. That's why it's called the writing process, because it's cyclical and it takes time. And, I didn't learn to do this overnight, and I wasn't a great writer in high school. I had teachers that really just invested in me, and I'm willing to do that for you. Okay. So, do's and don'ts. These are some of the big ones, the ones that I really want you to make sure that you're doing and not doing. So if you had any questions about this lesson or this video, or you just feel like you need some more support, I would be happy to give that to you. And I hope you all have a great day.